right now. And first of all, I want to say good evening to everybody. It's 8 o'clock here in Florida where I am, and I know it's 5 o'clock. I want to thank Professor Lough for inviting me into class. I always enjoy coming into her classes. Always a lot of fun engagement, a lot of good questions. And yeah, look, I love talking about data. I love talking about sports. I love talking about sports data. For me, just to give you an idea, for me, sports, what I love about sports is that sports are fun. And I really don't know of anything else that's more fun in terms of a business to work in than sports. I mean, it's just fun. And and the enthusiasm and a lot of what I hope to bring tonight, is going to be reflective of that fun. I'm an energetic guy, and I love what I do, and that will not change much. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to tell you a little bit about my company, a little bit about me, and then we're going to try to dive into the data. But before we actually look at data, and I'm going to try not to focus too much on the actual data points tonight until, of course, you start asking me questions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about the different types of data that you will use for your various projects. I know I've got somebody who's going to be developing a new soccer cleat. That's interesting to me. We're going to talk a little bit about that one. Marathon in Las Vegas, another cool idea. College hockey team, that's one I might not be able to give as maybe much help as I can others. Well, of course, we could look at Major League Hockey fans, fans of the Golden Knights. We can look at the Silver Knights. So we could look at, minor league hockey and of course the NHL. Don't have much on college hockey. Motocross. I don't have anything on motocross, but I do have a lot of information on auto racing fans. Don't know if they're the same, but whoever the motocross group is, we'll talk. And hopefully, what we'll do is we'll have a little bit of a discussion about the data and what sorts of data you might want to use. So what I'm going to do first is I am going to share. And hopefully I share yep, I can see it. And I'm guessing you can see my screen where it says, this is a PowerPoint, by the way. Can everybody see it okay? Cool. Thank you. So, what we're going to talk about is really something that is very near and dear to my heart, and that is the data-driven strategy and decision-making process. Because data is a remarkable tool. Aside from money, I don't know of anything in the sports business that's more valuable than data and information. And we're going to really talk about it today as it relates to your individual projects. But I love to talk about data and the decision-making process. I taught a class yesterday. We used data for the critical thinking process. And we were arguing two sides of a particular subject. Whatever it is, again, I love using data. Let's go to the next slide. There we go. So I'm going to talk a little bit about me. I'm going to show you, of course, the data analytics the data platform. But one of the things I want to talk about with you is your process, because it's your process that will lead you to the answers you need, you want, and the grades you want to get from Dr. Lough. So, we're going to talk a little bit about process. I'm a big process guy. And the reason why I say that is I have found that over the years when I'm working with clients, I always focus on process first. Some people, it gets a little annoying, but it's the way I get to the real answers that I want. We're going to talk about your objectives and then, of course, putting the data into use. Just so you know, I'm not some guy that just kind of got pulled off the street. I've owned SBRnet for over 5 years. I've actually been in the consumer marketing focused on sports for over 20 years. I've worked with major brands, major retailers, teams, leagues, and really everyone else that you can think of, associations, national governing bodies, the USOC. So I've really had an opportunity to work in all aspects of the sports business. So I have been around a bit. So our data. We focus data primarily in 3 areas at SBRnet. First is sports fans. We do an annual study every year that covers 19 sports, professional, college, and minor leagues, where we literally collect 65 separate data points or different data categories. So aside from things like demographics, aside from things like viewership habits, social media habits, we know who's gambling. We know where they're gambling. We know what teams are gambling on. We collect an awful lot of data. And of course, I went to gambling because, of course, we're talking to folks in Las Vegas. So again, we collect data on 65 separate categories. What's interesting is that we will not use a whole lot of the fan data tonight, with the exception of the group that wants to bring a marathon to Las Vegas. Who is that group? Raise your hand. Interesting. We're going to have a good, nice little discussion. One question I want to throw out there, let me ask you one quick question. Do you think that the sport of running or running is growing in the United States, is flat, or is down in terms of people who run?
It's going up. It's growing.
Okay. Well, I'm going to show you that the data says something different. And we're going to talk a little bit about that.
So, Neil,
Yes.
each of these teams is working with a specific group and has a coach from that entity, okay? So the
Okay.
Las Vegas Marathon is a rock and roll marathon, and they're working with that organization. Yeah,
Got
it's
it.
not that they want to bring a
Got it.
marathon here, they're working with the organization that puts the race on.
But the reason why I brought it up, Dr. Lough, is I want to talk a little bit about the process because, if you want to bring a marathon or you want to bring a race of any sort, you want to understand what's going on here in the United States or in the country right now with respect to running. Is running growing? Is running declined? Are there more people, different types of people, younger, older? It's just a good foundation to understand. Just because running is actually pretty flat right now doesn't mean, that it's not going to be a good event. It just means you have to understand exactly what's going on. And that kind of data is in our sports participation data, which covers 88 sports and activities, a full spread of demographics, multiple years of data. All of our data has multiple years. And the reason why is I like to do trending. I don't want to just give one data point, 1 year, or even 1 year over the previous year. I want to look at trends. How has something been doing over a period of time? And our data gives you the ability to be able to do that. And then the last data that we have is apparel, footwear, and equipment for sport. We have both domestic USA and global sales data. This data, by the way, is not data that I make, but it's data that I buy from a third party. But it's really interesting. Who's the group that's developing a new soccer cleat? Dr. Lough, what's their story? Just so I don't stick my foot in my mouth.
Yeah, so there is an entrepreneur here in town who has developed a prototype, and they've tested it. It is a completely different cleat. It's round, and they are trying to revolutionize the soccer industry. You can ask them for more specifics, but yeah. So it's legit, Neil. He's already got shoes out there that people have tried, and trying to break into the soccer cleat industry.
Well, I've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs. In fact, I'm working with 2 right now on one's a product-based and one is actually a new league-based product type of thing. But I've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs. I've worked to help them raise money, use data for their ability to be able to raise funds and raise money. So, again, that's an area that I do have a lot of experience in. And actually, I'm very curious about the soccer cleat because there really hasn't been all that much innovation in the area of soccer cleats, except for weight. They've been able to take so much of the weight out of soccer cleats. I mean, it's an absolutely incredible. They almost, rival like the running super shoe, which I don't know if a lot of you are familiar with, but we definitely can talk about it. but there's just an awful lot of data that we can work with. So this is our sports fan data. And the reason why I highlight this is because this is data that we actually make. We do the research ourselves. Whoops. We do the research ourselves. Every year we do a study of around 6,600 consumers, and we literally ask them all of the categories and actually more than you're seeing on the screen right now. What's interesting also is, and this, the running group also might be interesting, is that we have also asked all the sports fans, one of the new questions that we ask is, do they walk or run for fitness? So if you're going to do an event in Las Vegas, you might want to target fans of the Raiders, and or fans of other teams, whether it's UNLV sports or, the Golden Knights. We ask them a question about running and walking for fitness. So again, there's a variety of data that can answer a lot of different questions. And that's really where I want to start right now, is asking questions. What I like to do first is make sure that I am always trying to answer these questions. Who am I targeting? Who do I want to talk to? Oops, went too fast. What do I want to talk to them about? What is it that I know about these consumers? What is it that I want to learn? What is it that I want to target? When are they making a purchase? When are they doing something? Are they new to something, or have they been doing it for a while? Where? And that's more of a retail-oriented question, but it can also be a fan-oriented question, because you have fans that like to go to multiple games. And again, asking the where question. I'm going to skip over why for a second, and I'm going to go right to how. Because again, how is a question that always needs to get answered. How am I going to be able to reach the consumers I want to reach? Am I going to use traditional media, television, satellite, or am I going to try to use social media, or am I going to use streaming media? And again, all of our data allows you to be able to look at media habits and understand how you want to reach people. The reason why I keep why at the end, I probably should put why all the way at the end of that, is why is the single toughest question to answer. Why do people do what they do? That's a tough question. Psychologists, sociologists, anthropologists, I'm running out of apologists here, have always been trying to figure out why people do what they do. What's their motivation? What's their internal thinking? What is it that makes people do what they do? It's a tough question to answer. And it's one that data in many times can't answer. In fact, I like to talk about the why question as being more qualitative than quantitative. Does everybody know the difference between qualitative data and quantitative data? I see the guy with the red shirt in the front gave me 2 thumbs up. Anybody else want to share with me the answer to that? How about the young lady with the sweatshirt kind of draped over her shoulders?
Oh, that's me. The quantitative is more like numbers, like specific, like maybe demographics, and then the qualitative is more like in-depth questions, like about person's like thought processes, emotions, reasonings.
Yeah, like when I say, for instance, the Miami Dolphins lost to the who they play last week, I forgot, the Seattle Seahawks 24-3. That is a quantitative analysis. Dolphins scored 3, Seattle Seahawks scored 24. I'm a Miami Dolphin fan. It's been a rough year. But if I say something like the Miami Dolphins stink, what I've now done is I've now added a qualitative aspect. Why? Because it has nothing to necessarily do with any particular numbers. Quantitative always reflects numbers. Qualitative does not. Qualitative, again, relies a little bit more on emotion, a little bit on how you feel about something. It gets a little kind of touchy-feely. Before I go to the next slide, let me take a quick sip here. So I talk a lot about process and using data for problem solving and develop your marketing strategies. When you are engaged in this type, when you are engaged in this type of a situation, You want to open up your mind to as much data as you can get your hands on. Do you want to use it all? Answer is no. But you want to throw as much data into the top of that funnel as you can. You then want to allow the data that's important by being able to answer the who, what, when, where, why, and then, well, the why and the how question is what's going to drip down through the bottom of the funnel and is going to be the data that you're going to use to help you with your data-driven marketing plan, your data-driven business plan. Because data is what separates a good plan from a great plan. Great plans feature data. Good plans, I can't always speak to that. But if you're putting data in there, you can take a good plan to great by putting in the right data. And that's where my little funnel approach comes from. By, again, loading the top of the funnel up, looking at as much data as I can, letting the data go down that answers the who, what, when, where, how, and why question, and then allows you to be able to formulate your marketing plan, your business plan. The last thing I want to show that's process driven is data's wonderful. I love data. I mean, there's no question about it. But data for data's sake doesn't really do anybody any good. But data that tells a story, now that does everybody good. When you get out of school, and hopefully you're going to, how many of you would like to get a job in the sports business when you get out of school? Well, I have a job in the sports business. When you get out there and you're out there in front of, your employer, and you're out there using data and you're talking about data that tells a story is so much more important than data for data's sake. And I love to tell a story with data. I mean, to me, that is, again, what separates good from great is data. So again, when you're using your data, again, we talk about objectives. What's your objective? I'm going to talk to the guys with the team with the soccer cleats. Who are you again?
Pivot.
Got you. What's the name of the company? Just out of curiosity. Are they, is that a non-disclosure type of thing, or is it?
Pivot.
Pivot. I'm writing that down if you don't mind, just because I'll use it in. So if you're working with Pivot, what is your main objective for them? Somebody in the group want to talk about it? What's your objective? What do you want to do for them?
We want to try to
Increase exposure.
Break into the market.
introduce the brand.
Create brand equity.
Well, you said a lot of different things there. So, let's break it down for a second.
Very driven. So we have
What's that?
we're a very driven group, so we have a lot of
I hear that. But there's a lot of different ways that a company can grow. Number one, data can be used to help them raise money. Where are they in their money raise? Are they Series A? Are they past Series A? Are they in the venture stage? Where are they in terms of their money raise?
the beginning.
They're going to probably need a lot of money. So, there's going to be, one of the objectives could be, hey, we want to use data to help us raise money. We want to get past the angel stage to the venture stage. Actually before the venture stage, you've got the friends and family stage, and then the angel stage, and then the venture stage, and then you can go look at private equity. But in all of these stages, data will help drive the story. One of you said you want to increase brand awareness. What do you think is a good way to increase brand awareness, just out of curiosity? Anybody want to kind of jump in from the team? How many social media followers do they have?
None.
0.
0? Wow.
They're just starting with the social media aspect.
So
and
again,
website.
social media is a wonderful opportunity and a wonderful platform to establish some brand equity with consumers. Find an influencer, find somebody that's going to be able to drive the brand on social media. But again, these are all different aspects of how you would use data to grow. What platform would you want to use? Do you want to use TikTok?
Yes.
Yes.
Instagram?
TikTok.
Well, let the data tell you that. Don't just think that, oh yeah, I'm going to use TikTok. Now look, TikTok has been able to drive an awful lot of brands and help a lot of brands. I'd be crazy not to say that. But, maybe a campaign on Instagram, maybe, a campaign on X or Twitter. I don't even know what to call it anymore. But so again, let the data tell you where you should be headed in order to grow brand equity, brand awareness, sales, awareness. I can go on and talk about that but the way you do it though is to take your data, choose your data, organize your data, and then create visualizations. Now, you do not have to be a data scientist to do any of these things. All you have to know how to do is use Excel in the most basic of ways. By taking data, creating a visualization, a graph or chart. But what makes the data sing are the insights you're able to drive from the data itself. When you look at sales of soccer cleats, let's say here in the United States, again, it's going to tell you certain things that you need to know. By the way, soccer cleats show growth and in fact show a nice pattern of growth through 2030. I have that data to show at some point. But
Can you
again,
show
it's,
us now, Neil?
what's that?
Can you show us the data now, just so they can see what they're gonna be looking at?
Right
It's a
now.
two-
Oh boy, challenging me. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna working without a net, so to speak. All right, where did I put you? Hey, give me a second here, Dr. Lough. Where did I put it? It's a good question. Okay, here we go. I was actually, you know what? I got a better idea. I just changed my mind. Let's start looking at the data. Let's do this the easy way. I'm going to forget all this other good stuff that I've spent all this time making. Okay, and we're going to go right to the data. So this is the main site that you'll go to. You access the site via your library. Don't try to go directly to sportsmarketanalytics.com and expect to be able to get on. You won't. You will not be able to access the data. It has to go through your library website. So you access the library, you would probably go to the directory of databases or something along those lines. And it will then come up as SBRnet or Sports Market Analytics. If it doesn't say, welcome University of Nevada, Las Vegas, or welcome UNLV, you're not on.
SMA
not
for
on.
me.
Okay?
SMA.
What's that?
Analytics.
Is somebody looking on the library now?
He found it. It's Sport Marketing Analytics here.
Okay, I'm going to actually reach out to the library probably tomorrow, because also I'm going to I'll add your logo to the homepage. I'll make it all nice and we've got a lot of new stuff going on. But let's talk a little bit about that first thing that we talked about, soccer cleats. Let's look at the soccer cleat market. So this is apparel, footwear, and I'm going to make this bigger because I can't even see it. Can you guys see that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, all along.
Okay, this is the data that we currently collect sales data for, and we collect apparel, footwear, and equipment. So I'm going to go over here to soccer, football. The company that I do this comes from outside of the US, I might add. Hold on, let me make this a little bigger, even still. Now, the data is not going to be soccer. I'm going to get there in a second. So we're going to download. What will happen is you'll be here, you'll go to the sales data area, you'll select soccer, you will then download US football soccer data. Now, you notice there, by the way, that you had global data. You do not have access to that. I'm sorry about that, but you don't. I could talk to the library about getting it, but right now you do not have access to it. You could. All right, I'm going to pull up the data and slide it over. So give me a second and make it bigger. Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about it. I made it. Is that better? Yeah, you can all see it?
Yeah.
So all the data that we're going to look at is going to represent it in millions of dollars. And again, it's football, soccer, sporting goods market in the United States only. So column E tells you it's apparel, footwear, or equipment. And then we have the data from 2018 all the way through 2030. Now, the data from 2024 through 2030 is all projected. We projected it using what they call the CAGR formula, compounded annual growth rate. We basically use simple regression to be able to look at the past to project the future. The process of that is called CAGR, compounded annual growth rate. But let's talk a little bit about the data for footwear right now. I'm going to highlight it. Is that okay? In yellow? Might make it a little easier to see. You see that? Everybody, you know what? Let's just move it over a little bit. Everybody see that okay?
Yeah.
So what do we see? We see since 2018 that footwear for soccer here in the United States has gone from $1.3 billion in revenue. In 2023, it's up to $1.5 billion in revenue. So, and I rounded. So again, what this is doing is it is telling you, what is this telling you? Soccer team, what's it telling?
There's an increase in consumption of soccer footwear.
Yes, absolutely. Now, how can there be, let me ask you a question. There's really only two ways you could get an increase in consumption. What are they?
Growth, or like popularity of the sport.
Number of units sold, price.
Think quantitative for a minute.
Number of units sold or price.
Got it. So they sold more units or they sold at a higher price. So there's two ways, remember, that companies grow their revenue. Well, it's actually three, but two ways. One is they find more customers, sell more units, or they raise their prices. We're going to probably see some price increases as we start looking at 2024 through 2030. I would not be surprised, by the way, if the CAGR number for footwear goes over 4 or 4.2 by the time we reach, let's say, the end of next year or even 2026. But as you can see, all categories of soccer equipment, footwear, apparel, and equipment are increasing and have increased year over year since 2018 and will continue to grow through 2030.
Mr. Schwartz,
Yes.
is this part of the data you buy, or is this data that your company?
This is data I buy. Okay, so
And
this
if,
data, what's that?
Are we able to drill down and to see the sales numbers for a specific cleat, or is it just an overview of the total sales?
No, we're not able to give you the actual product, SKU data. We do not have data at the SKU level. I really also don't have data at the brand level, frankly. Yeah, young lady with her hand up.
So hypothetically speaking, if the cleat is like multi-purpose, not just for soccer, is there a way to look at like outdoor, indoor sport apparel?
What you can do, and what a lot of people have done, and this is actually a good question. Lacrosse is a sport that was growing for the last number of years. It has slowed down somewhat. So, but people say, look, when they look at football cleats, they look at soccer cleats, they look at cleats, they want to look at all of the cleated sports with the exception of, let's say, baseball, because baseball cleats are generally more unique. Now, soccer cleats are unique also. But again, people want to look at like sports, they want to look at maybe soccer, rugby. Most rugby players wear typically a soccer or a football cleat. But again, there are shoes that are designated for those various sports. But then what, you would have to then go into the data. Let me go back here for a second. Pick the different sports and then be able to add the numbers together, which you have to do.
Okay.
Can't do it for you. But it can be done. And I think also for the cleat team, that is something to be considered. When you're presenting, whoever it is, when you're raising money, whether you're putting together a marketing plan, one of the numbers that I think would be a fabulous number to start with is what is the total revenue of cleats sold in the United States? You'd add up, football, you'd add up rugby, you'd add up soccer, you'd add up rugby, you'd add up, I'm missing a bunch, I'm sure. Lacrosse. So you'd add up all, and those big numbers are always a great place to start. And then you would start off by then drilling deeper. Remember I talked about the funnel approach? Start big, work your way smaller.
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
kind of staying with soccer and pivot a little bit. Do you want to show them the participation data as well?
That's where I'm going next.
Okay, good.
That's where I'm going. Because one person said, well, selling more units. Well, if you sell more units, that means you've got to sell more units to people. There is a saying, and you could steal it if you want, but I've been saying this for 25 years. If people don't play, they don't need to buy. If people don't play, they don't need to buy. God, I can't tell you how many times I've said that. But here's the participation data. So the participation data measures level of participation since, I think it's like 2015. Now, there is one slight little problem with the data. I have the 2023 data. It doesn't all show up here. My data scientist made a big boo-boo a couple days ago. So you'll see the data. Dr. Lough, I can send you the total, the Excel spreadsheet with all the 2023 data, because we're trying to untangle a mess that we made. But here's an example. Let's go to lacrosse. Let's go to soccer. We look at both indoor and outdoor soccer. Let's go to outdoor for now. This data, by the way, comes to me from the Sports and Fitness Industry Association. Some of the data is here, not all of it. Let me make it bigger. Where's my plus symbol? Here we go. Too big. Can everybody see this okay now? Can everybody see it okay? So across the top, we're looking at total soccer players, total number of soccer players. And as you can see, since 2016, that number has jumped from 6.3 million. All of these numbers are in thousands. Remember, the equipment, footwear, and apparel data is all in millions. This is all in thousands. Says it right at the top, so you won't get too confused. But from 2016 all the way to 2023, we can see there's been a substantial increase in the number of soccer players. In fact, year over year, a big number. And we see some of the biggest jumps, interestingly enough, happening post-pandemic or in the pandemic. Look at the jump from 2019 to 2020. It's a big jump. My math is pretty good, but that's about a 20% increase year over year. 2021 also a little slip off that, but up again in 2022, up again in 2023. The interesting thing is, look at the 2022 numbers. I'm sorry, the 2020 numbers against the 2023. Look, they had a great year coming out of the pandemic. Things cooled off. I'm not going to kid you. And here are all the demographics: household income, geographic region, gender, education, and age. But here's another interesting thing. Here's another interesting number. These are what they call core soccer players. Now, these are people that play at least 50 times a year. These people are playing at least once a week. These are the core, the real soccer players. These are the group that you will most likely want to target for your new soccer cleat. What's the pricing on the pivot soccer cleats? Is it high, low? What's the pricing?
200 to 300 for adults, 100 to 200 for children.
Say what? 300 is what you said?
200 to 300 for adults.
Wow. What makes them, aside from the unique bottom design, what else makes them special? Just out of curiosity.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah, the upper is supposed to be a thermoplastic, a recyclable material. But I don't know if that's, that's a lesser selling point than the outsole.
It's mainly just the sole of the cleat that makes it different from every other cleat.
And
Are they using carbon plate technology
Nope.
for the sole at all?
No.
As you can tell, I know a lot about footwear. I spent a lot of time working with brands like Adidas, Nike, you name it. I've worked with them all. Skechers.
It's designed for women because there hasn't been a soccer cleat that's supposed to like tailor to the anatomy of a woman and how they play the sport, I guess.
But as a woman, I told them they should think about it.
It's an interesting. What's your first name, the young lady in the front?
Maria?
Maria?
Yes.
No, Maria, you said something really interesting and actually said something that kind of goes right to the heart of a couple of things. But, for a lot of years, sporting goods manufacturers, both apparel and footwear in particular, did not make their products to suit women. They used it. And anybody ever heard the term pink it and shrink it? That's basically what many manufacturers, apparel and footwear have done. They basically pink it, for women and shrink it because women, smaller feet, things like that. But guess what? That is not the way that that's not the way to grow the women's business. The way to grow the women's business is to understand women's anatomy and the differences that, the difference in their anatomy. I'll tell you a specific example I did a number of years ago where I worked with the company called Majestic. They are the people that make uniforms for Major League Baseball. Well, they were having a tough time growing sales, for consumers, to fans. And one of the things we found out was that women weren't buying licensed jerseys. Why? Because the jerseys were made for men. Women button their jerseys the opposite way than men. I did not know that. I learned about it. Women want softer materials than men. Men aren't as focused on that. That's what women want. Women also obviously women are built differently. Obviously, whether it's bust size, whatever it is, women are built differently. The clothing that they were manufacturing was not made properly for women. When they went and started to make, outfits for licensed jerseys for women, guess what happened? Started selling more because women started to pay attention. It's the same thing, by the way, in this case.
You
Got a-
know,
I got a little off-
you know me well enough to know that I've talked to them about that at length, so you know me, right? Yeah.
Well,
so,
I know you're a champion for women's sports, Dr. Lowe, and I know, I know
you
that.
know me from sport marketing, so they've learned about pink and shrink it. I'm wondering if you could share a little bit of data that might help our marathon group out.
Yeah, that's an interesting group also. Let me back up a little bit. So again, the marathon, marathon really starts with people that run. That run generally for fitness. Running is treated as a separate sport up here somewhere. We have running, we have track and field, triathlon. I don't know why ultimate frisbee is there, but the running data talks, remember you said that running is growing here in the United States. Well, it's growing a little bit. It's more flat than anything else. Total number of runners from 23,441,000 to 23,776,000. These are people that run at least once a year. Not, but if you look at core runners, these are people that run at least 50 times a year. So at least once per week. And what do we see? We again see that the numbers are kind of all over the place, truthfully, up very slightly. So again, understanding, the number of runners, but also looking at it in your case, where's the marathon group? Understanding those numbers in your region of the country. And the interesting thing is your region of the country, the numbers have been remarkably flat. Literally it's the same percentage of numbers, although the percentage of runners, is it looks like second largest pocket of runners, except for the South Atlantic, which is, where I live in, like Florida. Look, it's no surprise. Better weather means people can run longer and run more. So there's no question about that. So again, understanding, runners, runners tend to be a little bit higher educated. Looking at the demographics, as we can see, the largest single group are the 25 to 34-year-olds. That, by the way, is a good story to tell, because when you start looking at the demographics of 25 to 34-year-olds, you start to see, again, certain demographics, higher income, higher education, things that you can utilize to be able to justify an event in Las Vegas. We break it down by, gender, so you can look and see women. Women are actually running a little less. Kind of interesting. Again, it's pretty flat. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that running's down. It's flat. Males, men, flat. I mean, running right now is just flat. And because, look, at a certain point, running has to do a number of things, in my opinion, differently in order to grow the sport. I don't want to get started because I used to go to the running event. I would talk a little bit about ulterior other ways to grow the sport, but I'm going to share with you something that's kind of interesting. Okay, about runners. You could use the data or not. So now, in fact, I don't even know if you have this, but I'll send it to you. Let me show you something. This is kind of interesting. At least I think it is. But again, I think all data is interesting. So what are we looking at here? We ask a question in our annual study of sports fans. Actually, can you see it? I'm going to make it bigger. Can you see it now?
Yep.
Okay. We ask a question in our annual study of sports fans. Do they walk or run for fitness? And if they do, how many days per week, how often, so forth and so on. Now, remember one thing. The market or the population of this survey are sports fans. So we know first there are 173 million, yep, that's a big number, fans of the NFL in the United States. It's a lot of friggin' fans, folks. And we know exactly how many fans there are of each team. And in fact, if I go to Las Vegas, the Raiders, that's a big number. You've got 4.6 million fans of the Las Vegas Raiders. So, but what's interesting is that when you start to compare the number of Raiders fans that run or walk, it's a very interesting situation. Because here we have what they call the vertical percent. What percent of Vegas fans walk or run for fitness? Well, guess what? Las Vegas Raider fans may be among the highest percentage of fans that like to walk or run. For you guys targeting, a new event, it would be great to establish a partnership, with the Raiders. Look at the same thing for the Golden Knights. Look at the same thing for UNLV. Because remember, sometimes you can't do it alone. You've got to partner with other organizations, other groups. In this case, the Raiders might make an amazing partner for the Las Vegas Marathon. And then you can get all the demographics you need. You can have all the targeting information that we have, everything that you can imagine, because when you look at our data, hang on, I know you can't see that because I can't. We literally measure 65 separate categories of data for football fans. So you can get at their, their demographics, you can get at their generational, you can get at, things like social media engagement, you can get at, are they buying licensed merch? You can get at all of that different data. So by partnering,
How about Neil,
with-
can you show us, maybe let's look specifically at hockey social media data. Do you do that?
sure.
Like-
Yes,
Yeah, NHL?
yeah, I can. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna cheat a little, Nancy, Professor Lowe, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, just trying to make sure every group gets a little bit of.
No, I understand. Believe me, I'd like to help every group. I got news here. I might be willing to throw myself out there for each. How many groups are there?
4.
4 groups. I might be willing to give each one of the groups 20 minutes of time at some point in the next 2 weeks or so. If you want to, set up a Zoom. I know I might regret it, but Dr. Lowe has always been a good supporter of ours. And so I will do things for her that I might not do for others.
Making them laugh, Neil.
What can I tell you? What can I tell you? So let's look at hockey fans. So let's do a little bit of the funnel action. So we know since 2016, fans of the NHL have jumped up from 55.3 million up to 72.1 million. Pretty good jump. But we know one thing, they're not jumping so much in attendance. Where are they jumping? They're jumping in streaming. They went from streaming or viewership. They went from 65 million people who watched at least one game up to almost 69 million. In streaming alone, they went from 22.5 million fans who streamed up to 27.3 million. Folks, that's a big number. That's big number of gain. But then if you want to start looking at their social media habits, we are able to go right down here to social media usage and determine, well, I know you can't see the years on the top, but again, the NHL, Facebook, Twitter. Now, we don't cover all of the social media platforms. This is what we call our summary report. If you want that report, you would go to the premium section, you would click on fan studies and go right down to the NHL and click on that right there. You would download that. I'm going to download it somewhere. Doesn't really matter. I have files downloaded all over the place. And again, you would have the ability to look at all of the different, I'm going to bring it over here in a minute and make it bigger. It's tough when you do these because, everything's so small. But again, talks a little bit about the methodology. Here's the contents. I'm going to go to make it bigger, I swear. And then here we list all of the what do you call social media platforms. So one, you can look at it overall, but then you can go all the way down to TikTok. And by the way, we consider YouTube a social media platform. So you can look at the usage specific to all of the different platforms.
You got a question, Neil? Hang on. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay.
Hey, Neil. I had a question. Since we're college hockey, I know you said there's not much data on like specific college stuff. I guess what's from your experience and research, like how impactful should we take like professional, like NHL/minor league data into consideration?
Well, here's what I would do. I'm not saying this is what you should do, but remember I said you want to start wide and work your way down. Here's the story I would tell. Okay, remember I said use data to tell a story. Number one, I would start at the largest or the most global or the widest number of hockey fans, period, and professional in the United States. You could then break it down by professional and minor league hockey, because I do cover minor league hockey, by the way. That's where I would start. But then what I would do is, now you're talking about a college team. Are you talking about UNLV specifically?
Correct.
Okay. So I don't know a thing about UNLV hockey fans because, quite frankly, there's no hockey program. But I do know an awful lot about UNLV basketball fans. I would go and start looking at UNLV basketball fans and how they compare, let's say, to the average fan of the Golden Knights, average fan of the Silver Knights, and then tell that story. Because you can't, what's that?
Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. You're going to use it. Kidding. Because quite frankly, it's tough to tell a story from something that you can't show growth for. I'm not going to kid you. But again, you use the data to tell stories. Start wide and start narrowing it down. Start at hockey, all hockey, major and minor together. Break it out, major and minor. You can look at the Vegas Golden Knights and the Vegas Silver Knights. I see you in the back. I'm getting you in a minute. And then for the last step in the story, look at UNLV basketball fans. Because chances are there's going to be a lot of similarities.
Yeah, another question, Neil.
I see in the back.
So I got a question for you. So like the ice hockey minor league, like apparel wise, like your stats say that like males buy 64%. So regarding that to like the UNLV hockey, they only can sell like a certain amount inside of their complex or online. So how do you think we should advertise, like kind of get data to advertise that as something that is, I guess, willing to be bought from the people from Vegas or people that know about the program in Vegas? Like, I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, no, I think you're asking a really interesting question. And again, I'm going to use my funnel formula. I mean, it may sound like a little like corny and overused, and maybe it is. But again, I'm going to start. What's your first name?
Mitch,
What is it? I couldn't hear that. I'm sorry.
Mitch.
Mitch. So what I would do personally, I would look at all of the different sports. For instance, I would look at Golden Knights licensed merch purchases. I would look at Silver Knights licensed merch purchases. I would look at UNLV basketball licensed merch purchases. And then I would look to see what kind of business they're doing on Fanatics. Does everybody know who Fanatics is?
Yes.
Yes.
Fanatics is the #1 seller of licensed merch in the country, maybe in the world. I don't know. But I would look and see if in fact where is it being bought? Is licensed merch for the Golden Knights, the Silver Knights, and then UNLV basketball, is it being mostly bought online or is it being bought at the stadium? We have that data. So you're able to, what's that?
I can see that on this list here, in-store pickup, type of outlet, etc. So that's super helpful. We only have like 4 minutes left and then we got to call it. So I want to get to our, what's our last one? Motocross group. Yeah. Any data that you think could be useful for them?
I have to tell you, that's going to be a big challenge. We have no data that relates to motocross at all. I don't have equipment data. I don't have participation data, and I don't have fan data. The only data that I have for fan data that has wheels is NASCAR, IndyCar, and Formula One. So I don't know, I don't know if there's any relationship whatsoever to any.
Do you have any other action sports, Neil? They kind of consider themselves an action sport.
I was gonna say, do you have data broken down by like racetracks? So like if NASCAR and Indy are racing at the speedway, like that might be able to help them.
No.
Speedway, okay.
I mean, I do have, I do have number of people that attend, NASCAR events, obviously, or IndyCar events or Formula One events live. So I do have that, but I couldn't tell you, like if they have multiple events, let's say the Indianapolis Speedway, I know they have the 500 there and a NASCAR event there. I couldn't tell you which event, there are more fans at. I don't track it that granular.
By chance, do you do BMX?
Yeah, that I do.
Okay.
But I don't think BMX, I mean, with all due respect, Dr. Lowe, I don't think BMX, necessarily, let me look, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I'm mountain biking. I do have BMX racing.
Okay.
I'm not sure that there's I'm not sure that there's an association there. I don't know.
Well, they consider themselves an action sport, so we
They do.
could, if you think about like X Games type sports, that's one thing that the group could do is I see that you have some of
Well,
the
I do have,
action.
I do have BMX participation. So maybe, maybe there's something that you can draw from that. I do have BMX sales in terms of, again, footwear, equipment, and apparel. Maybe there's an association that can be drawn from that. I can look at adventure racing, but I'm not sure there's an association there, to be honest.
Okay. Well, this has been really helpful. Anybody have a last question for Neil before we call it a night? Pretty good?
Look, I said something and I put my foot in my mouth, but it's okay. If you want, as a team, if you want to reach out to me and get 20 minutes of my time as a team, pick one member to email me at neil@sbrnet.com, Neil, Neil, my first name. And I will be happy to give each one of the 4 teams 20 minutes. If you're struggling which data to select, if you're not sure how to, tell a story, I would love to help you a little bit. Okay. But I can't give you more than 20 minutes or so. Okay. But I will give you 20.
That's very, very kind of you, Neil. We very much appreciate it. I'm sure they wrote that down. I guess we have one question from Mitch, the
Yes.
other Mitch.
Yeah, sorry, Neil. I just wanted to ask, how do you look up specifically like by team, not necessarily like sport/league?
Yeah, the only data that is available from a team perspective is actually the fan data, the sports fan data, and frankly, you don't have access to it. I mean, I would when the hockey people call me and ask me for team data, I will send it to you, but the school does not have access. They have what we call our basic service, which does not include, oops, didn't mean to do that, which does not include team by team data. So therefore, I do not have, you don't have unfettered access to it, but if somebody needs it, I'll send it to you.
Awesome, thank you.
But you can bet I'm going to reach out to the library and let them know.
All right, cool.
It's not
Thank
that,
you.
it's not that expensive.
We want to give you a round of applause for taking time.
Dr. Lough, thank you very much for inviting me. I always enjoy these classes. By the way, you guys were among the best, the most enthusiastic and had some of the best questions that I've gotten recently. So kudos to you.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Neil.
All right,
Hey.
Neil.
You have a good night, everybody.
Don't make it do anything, it's like.